Today is March 1st, 2021, or the way it feels to all of us, March 356th, 2020.
Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been sentenced to jail for corruption. Interesting. Let me start it. I don't know what the going on here. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been sentenced to jail for corruption. Interesting. That's not who I had in my former president's going to jail office pool.
The federal government is attempting to set up an internet hub to help Americans find vaccination sites near them. Conveniently, it will also help Americans find out if they're a Phoebe or a Rachel.
Polls show that about 70% of Americans, including a sizable share of Republicans, support Biden's stimulus plan. But keep in mind, the last thing 70% of Americans were in favor of was dress Crocs.
And finally, former social media influencer and game show host Donald J. Trump spoke yesterday at the CPAC Conservative Political Action Committee. He spoke for 90 minutes, where he perpetuated the big lie that he won the 2020 election, alluded to plans he'll run again in 2024, and criticized the United States Supreme Court. You don't call me crazy, but I'm just now starting to think that maybe Donald Trump isn't handling his loss as well as he could have. Welcome to Biden time. We are here on a different day, and the schedule is always in flux, but we appreciate everybody who follows us and finds us. I'm Christian Blatt, joined by fellow mirth maker Tamara Brown. Look, I actually pointed correctly for once.
Yeah.
And there you go. Down our Tar Heel representative, Mr. Scott Moore. Welcome, Scott, Tamara, and everybody in the live chat. Lots to talk about, and interesting that we ended up doing the show on Monday, the day after former President Trump spoke at CPAC. I actually went to CPAC one year for work, and it was
what year?
2008. So it was fun.
Interesting year.
Yeah, I was very friendly with Andrew Breitbart, who has a website named after him that perhaps you've heard of. But I try to think of the man and the site a little differently. And, we actually lost him today, March 1st in 2012. And he's somebody that I miss very much. But I was at CPAC meeting up with him, and it was like trying to get through a room with one of the Beatles, at least in that setting. Okay. Everybody wanted to talk to him, and he would take the time to talk to him. Like, I'll see you later, because it's like I got dinner to eat. I can't walk through a hotel with Andrew Breitbart. But I think that the interesting thing about CPAC, I thought, for this year, obviously you had some straw polls of the approval of Donald Trump, but I wanted to talk to you, Scott, that to me, and obviously I'll ask Tamara the same question, the most telling thing to me, the straw poll for who they would want to vote for, Republicans there, conservatives at the CPAC convention, which I guess is a double, I'm repeating myself with the second C, is 53% said that they wanted to vote for Donald Trump. And in that room, 53%, only 53% saying that they would vote for him. That tells me an awful lot about, and there were all of the dyed in the wool true believers, or perhaps, depending on your opinion, false believers, but believers in President Trump who, ate up every word he said. But by reports, there were a lot of people just kind of standing around and like, oh, great, the speech that we've heard, dozens of times over the last 5 years. He was just out there to play the hits. So what do you think about the fact that there wasn't like an overwhelming, it wasn't like, a Beatles reunion all of a sudden on the stage, it's obviously there were people who were excited, but he didn't take CPAC by storm, which is, I think, what a lot of people were expecting.
Well, I would say that, though, his approval rating by everybody there was like something astronomical, like 97%. And I would also say the second thing is the fact that he was so far and ahead of everybody else there, although really it means nothing, because Ron DeSantis was number 2, who's the governor of Florida. And generally, if you look at these things, normally it's generally the governor or someone related to the state politics that always has a pretty good follow-up depending on where they're at, and this year it happened to be in Orlando. I would say that the fact that it's still 53% is surprising, and it shows why so many Republican politicians loathe to go against Donald Trump, because he still has a firm grip on the party, even after all the stuff that has happened over the past few months alone. The fact he still has 53% should be sending the yellow flashing lights to most of the establishment Republicans. And as I was reading about too, that a lot of people are saying, yeah, he's still firmly in control, and that 97% approval rating. But
yeah, I did see that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And, the statue they made for him and all this other ridiculous stuff. But that being said, it's a long way to go, 3 years until, 2 years, let's say, until we really start looking at who is going to be the nominee for Republicans in 2024. And it's different when you're not an incumbent running again. And, who are the people that are going to be there? How's this whole race going to shape out? There's so many questions. Even with Biden as president, would he run again? So I think that that'll also determine maybe who are the people that are going to jockey to first position. But it's a long way to go. So a lot of times it's like it really means nothing in the big scheme of things.
And with regards to the statue you referenced, if people didn't see it, I'll see if I can find a picture to share on the screen while we're talking. It's basically like one of those Bob's Big Boy statues that somebody basically painted gold. And the someone much funnier than I pointed out on Twitter, they're literally worshiping a false idol.
I think 90% of Twitter pointed that out.
Okay, good. Then I don't have to give anybody a credit. So I'm part of the 10% that didn't think about it.
Literally everyone pointed that out.
Well, that's good. So, and look, our pal, Storage Yard Resident, we appreciate finding us. Did you watch the same speech I saw? I'm going to tell you the God's honest truth, Storage Yard Resident. I did not watch it, but I did read about it, and I saw some clips. So perhaps I am not as well versed in it, but he really was out there playing the hits. It's all stuff we heard, and it's about as factual as it usually was. And I think that look, there's a lot of people there, Tamara, who in the days after January 6th were talking about how President Trump had gone too far, but it's politically expedient for people like Nikki Haley to take back what they had said and been like, no, he's definitely the leader of our party, because people are terrified by this guy still. And I've talked about this a lot. If you're worried about getting primaried by people that this guy picks out, just be a better candidate. It's not hard. What did you think? Were you in on the false idol tweet, Tamara, or did everybody get to it before you as well?
Yeah, I just saw it left, right, all over the place. Couldn't hardly steer clear of it. So I keep thinking about there's no other candidate that has taken over the enthusiasm of the Republican Party, and I'm trying to think about why is that? It's not, there's plenty of people who hit the same top 10 hits talking points that Trump does. I mean, you've got Don Jr., who I keep saying they should be groomed, he should be the one that I would think that the Trump family is planning to run in 2024 rather than
and not Eric. Interesting. Continue.
But why, and then obviously there's the ones that are anybody that's critical of Trump and the Republican Party can't seem to get that all important Trump base that they're all, drooling all over, falling over each other, trying to cater to. So what would it take to get another superstar who the Republican Party is throwing themselves behind? That is the question. I mean, Don's only going to be around for another 10 years, maybe? The man's 70 something and doesn't live a healthy lifestyle. So what is the Republican Party going to do when Donald Trump is not an option? And I think as we've talked about on this show a lot about how for, multiple factors, the Republican Party is in serious trouble. But I think the fact that they don't really, they're so there's so there's so many arms of the Republican Party within itself that they can't decide on who one superstar. So I think that's another reason that the Republican Party is just doomed.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think a lot of people feel that way. And Scott, you pointed out that in that straw poll, Ron DeSantis placed second. But I think you do that poll in any of the other 49 states, like he doesn't even place. He's got a high profile in Florida. And
now
not
clarify for me what.
Yeah.
So the 53% vote for Trump, but Scott mentioned a 97%. So
that's approval rating. It's like, how did you like the job that he did as president? 97%.
Oh, right. But only 53% of them said that they would vote for him again.
Right. Yeah. And so that 3% were, of course, kicked out of the conference, and they had their credentials revoked because obviously they weren't, watching the talking points. And Storage Yard resident, I love you, but I was watching Alex Jones on InfoWars, and he gave Trump 98% for the speech and then lowered his rating to 80% because Trump mentioned the vaccine. So consider your source there, Storage Yard resident. I feel like you're a reasonably bright fellow. Perhaps there's some differences of opinion along the way, but Alex Jones, who only has said that school shootings were not staged by actors because lawyers got involved. He had to stop saying that because he didn't want to go broke, which I'm shocked that he hasn't. But and I don't know. I mean, I think that the vaccine is something that President Trump can take some credit for, probably not as much as he likes to, but you can definitely point to it. He could have touted his accomplishments, but he needs everybody to believe that he's not what he is, which is a loser, because in November he lost, and he lost big to somebody that he has no respect for. That's Joe Biden, President Biden, by the way. So I think that that's really what it was done for. And I was reading that his advisors really had to strip a lot of stuff out of his speech. They didn't want him to go after Mitch McConnell because which it's a bit shocking. But the idea is that he's got like 3 months of pent up tweets inside of him that he's trying to get out in his speech, and he was not able to. So, look, I think that also, I did see that he kept everybody waiting about 2 hours. He was supposed to do the speech at like 3:30, and then he went on at 5. It was like a half hour after the speech was supposed to have started, and he hadn't left Mar-a-Lago yet. So anyway, I think
that straw poll was at 85% before the 2 hour wait that brought it down.
Yeah. We're like, hey, DeSantis didn't keep us waiting.
Right.
And then of course you had a few people who voted for the gold statue. But anyway, so look, this is a guy who is trying to cling on to some relevance, and it's funny because him speaking at CPAC, it kind of reminds me of a great scene from a movie that people probably don't think about that much, but there's this movie called Soap Dish from the late 80s. And on it, Whoopi Goldberg works with Sally Field. And Sally Field is an actress on a soap opera, and she has been for a long time. And when she's feeling really low, they do this thing where they go to a mall, and then Whoopi Goldberg freaks out at like she's recognizing her, and all these people come up and want her autograph just to make her feel good. So I feel in a lot of ways that President Trump is like Sally Field and Soap Dish. And that's the kind of hard-hitting comparisons you get on Biden time. You're not going to get that anywhere else. All right? They might compare to other characters in Soap Dish.
I think I did hear Jake Tapper say that 20 minutes ago. He made
Damn Tapper!
Tapper loves Sally Field. I mean, everybody knows that.
By the way, who doesn't? She's the flying nun, and she's Gidget.
That's right. She's an American treasure. She was
also one of the Aunt Mays for one of the Spider-Men. But anyway, so look, I think that it's interesting because he hadn't spoken in so long, and I'm sure people like Storage Yard Resident are excited. But to everything that we've been saying earlier over those last few minutes and what we've said in the weeks leading up to this, I don't see him being in any kind of condition where he can run for president. I also don't see the party tried to stop him from being the nominee in 2016. If you want to see how corrupt the swamp really is, let's see Donald Trump try to get himself on the ballot as the Republican nominee in 2024. The lengths that will be gone to make sure that that doesn't happen, I think were great. The other thing I want to talk about from CPAC was Ted Cruz talking about how the Republican Party is the working man's party and not the party of country clubs anymore. And of course, it does come from a guy who literally ran away from his freezing state to go to a very expensive resort in Mexico. But anyway, we spent far too much time on CPAC and far too much time on Ted Cruz earlier. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was it's not really national level politics, but we're getting more allegations against New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. And the reason why I want to talk about it is that Fox News was kind enough to point out on a graphic that CNN, MSNBC, and a number of broadcast networks are not talking about this story. Now, I know that it is just a governor for New York State, but when he was, giving his COVID updates, there was a sort of like a rock star following for him. Remember, the Academy of Television Arts and Scientists gave him an honorary Emmy for those. So, there's a lot of criticism against him because there are these allegations, and he tried to appoint his own judge to investigate them, and he has since backed off on that. He's letting an independent panel of judges basically pick someone to do it. Do you think, Tamara, and this will tie in a little bit to a story we'll talk about after this, do you think it's like, oh, we like him, we like his policies, let's not dive into this? Or is it because, there's just a couple of allegations? But similarly, this is on the heels of a scandal about, a lot of indication that for the nursing homes, that they were intentionally underreported because they wanted him to look better. And there are a number of people who resigned from the state government in New York. So what do you think about the fact that Fox News was, of course, very kind to make sure that they covered this story, but also wanted to cover the fact that they were covering it when other outlets weren't?
Well, Fox News wants to, they could make a case. You could name any topic, and they could make a case that somebody isn't reporting it in order to, push their narrative that the mainstream media only tells you.
Let me interject for a moment. I don't think I've ever seen the PBS NewsHour devote any time to the war on Christmas. So I think you're onto something. Go ahead.
But I read most about the Cuomo allegations from the New York Times. So it's not like it's not getting, front page news. CNN, I mean, it's completely understandable that they wouldn't report on it because I'm sure they have to, his brother Chris is probably saying I'll leave without, I don't know. They have a conflict of interest.
Sure.
So I can understand that if CNN not reporting on it. But I think for other outlets other than CNN, if it's true that they actually aren't reporting on it, MSNBC, I don't know. I would doubt that it's because they have some sort of secret allegiance to Governor Cuomo. It's probably more so that these outlets want sensationalism, and until there's some sort of talking bit about it that's a little bit more interesting, they're just not going to report on it.
Yeah, I think that you have a number of outlets who, as soon as there are, screen caps of sexting, or maybe some inappropriate photos, that's when they'll take interest. Scott, if I ran CNN, they do a lot of things, but if I ran CNN, it's almost like, oh, we have to cover this story. We have to spend time on it because of the fact that his brother works for us. We don't make him do it on his show, but it just sort of, as they say, the optics look really bad. Why do you think that there's not more attention from the televised media on this story? Is it because it is more of a regional story, or what do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both. It is a bit more of a regional story. But I think it will grow in coverage as potentially more of these allegations come out. Like I was reading about the 25-year-old assistant, and she had a little bit more details. It's going to be kind of a similar thing that I do believe will affect maybe Andrew Cuomo's hope for some higher office, much like what happened with Eric Garcetti. He was trying to be vetted to be in the Biden cabinet, and I think there were a lot of things that same thing Andrew Cuomo wanted to hopefully, get to higher office. And this will definitely put a chill on that opportunity to be able to take that next step. And probably, like we were talking about earlier, there's probably a good reason, again, CNN doesn't want to get into the complexities of that. They probably really don't want to get into it right now, and they're going to try to avoid it as long as possible. And it is kind of a bad tactic, because I think if they continue with that tactic, it does play into the media being in the hands of the left, and that just plays into that stereotype a little more if CNN doesn't try to bring it up. So I think it is in their best interest to try to at least talk about it. But I believe they will once it becomes more of a bigger issue. But as I was saying, it will definitely chill Cuomo's aspiration for higher power or higher office.
It's funny because if you think back 10 months ago, Andrew Cuomo and Gavin Newsom were two people whose stars were very much on the rise. And we talked a bit about Gavin Newsom last week. And I think that you're definitely sort of seeing, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess in some ways that gets a lot of extra attention, but now these are people who, I mean, you have people calling for Cuomo to be impeached, which, I think that obviously it's conveniently, political enemies and such. I just think that, a Republican governor of New York, perhaps these would have happened, if George Pataki got into these kinds of shenanigans, perhaps we would have heard about that. And I had to go that far back to our.
I mean, it did with Elliot Spitzer. I mean,
that's true.
Think about it. I mean,
yeah. And maybe they're just sort of waiting for I don't know what. Well, the reason why I bring this up first, and then it does tie into another thing. Look, it's something that I think we all suspected and pretty much felt we knew, was the revelation last week that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Boy, I hope the Saudi Arabia.
You're breaking up, Christian.
Crown Prince, MBS as they call him, did actually. All right. Well, if I'm back, MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, that he was indeed guilty of ordering that the journalist, the American citizen, the journalist Jamal Khashoggi was killed. And the Biden White House, despite comments that he made during the campaign, they're not really going to do anything to punish him. And I think that there's a lot of ways you can handle something like this. I find it disappointing, but I also understand the complexity of the Middle East. When you heard this, Tamara, what did you think?
Well, surprise. Yeah. I think it's disappointing that the Biden administration is not really going to do anything about it. I mean, for this and for other reasons, we need to. I mean, you can tell me a little bit more insight on the situation, but it seems like there should be some more sanctions or something on Saudi Arabia for something like this. One of the many disappointing things about the Biden administration that's coming out, that's currently happening right now. So. I don't think anybody was surprised, but I do wish that I don't know, like what do you think that the Biden administration's response to this should have been?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a lot of tough talk on the campaign, a lot of criticism for the way that, President Trump said, like, well, he told me he didn't and I believed him. Well, now you can't use that anymore. What do you think would have been an appropriate response, Scott, from the Biden White House?
Well, yeah, I was very disappointed with the lack of response, but I also think that they are in a very precarious situation. It's like, yes, it was a kid gloves approach, but what they could do theoretically without maybe instigating a wider Middle East situation that would potentially lead to, a bit of a mess there, because it's all it takes is sort of like that little bit of a spark to then get all these other allies for Saudi Arabia involved, and it could lead to a greater instability there. And so it's a very fine balance. And at least, again, it doesn't mean much, but at least they've acknowledged that he did it. And at least they've taken the steps which were reversal of the Trump administration of not being able to sell arms to them and not selling arms to UAE and pulling out of Yemen and doing certain things that the Trump administration was not doing. But I do believe there should be further action, and maybe it'll come at a later time when they feel that it is appropriate. But right now, with the Iran deal and some of the other things going on in the Middle East, they probably felt like to do something a little bit more aggressive would have led to more instability. So it's a very tough, fine line, and everyone knows that clearly that it's come out that he was responsible and that there should be some more substantial punishment. And who are we don't know. I mean, maybe there will be something down the line, but right now with all those other things going on, it really puts them in a tough position to be able to do what they need to do. And it also puts them in a place where then Republicans go back and be like, well, look at all the peace agreements that Trump did right before he left office, and now Biden's throwing it all away because now he's led to instability in the Middle East. And now the Iran deal, they couldn't get back in because of X, Y, and Z reasons, because of Saudi Arabia, that led to the wider issues they're having there. So they have a lot of other factors to deal with, but they acknowledged it. They told him that they're aware of it, and that hopefully something further down the line will come from this. But I do agree it was like a kid glove approach, and it was really not the reaction we should have done. But I don't know what the greater diplomatic behind the scenes private things were going on in those discussions. So
yeah, I mean, it could be one of those things where in a few months we're like, oh, okay, I guess that's what the plan was. But yeah, I think look, it's a very difficult region of the world to deal with, but I guess
unless it comes to drone strikes, then we know what to do.
Well, I mean, come on, we all know what to do with drone strikes. I wanted to take a moment actually and talk about again, sort of that part of the world. And because I was reading about how Israel's vaccination program has gone so well. They've got about 89%. There's like an 89% decrease in COVID cases. And it's gone so well that they're now vaccinating Palestinians who work within Israel. So the fact that they're like, the people that they're like always fighting with, it's like, yeah, we have so many, we're going to give some to you. And I think that, look, here in California, March 1st is today. And there's some changes in how the vaccine's being administered. You have healthcare organizations like Kaiser are able to give them out. Teachers are eligible, grocery store workers. So you see things, but you still feel like it's a long ways off. I don't know that the three of us are on a list. Scott, you've been in North Carolina. I don't know if maybe you can sneak one while you're there. I don't even know where they are in their vaccine rollout. Just say y'all, y'all got any vaccines? And they'll be like, oh, he must be a local. But it's good. It's great to hear of, I guess it's because a government that takes it seriously. But then here in the US, you'll hear that West Virginia is the state that's leading the way. So it just shows how
and Florida was doing good too, right?
In terms of the vaccine, yeah. I have family that lives there. I think my mom's gotten her second shot now. But
my mom has two in Arizona. She just got it this morning, so her second one. So
yeah, and in places like New Jersey, it's opened up to. I mean, they give it to smokers there, So it's I don't know. I find it to be encouraging. Yes, frustrating at the same time, but I find it encouraging. And look, as I always say, you look at Israel, look to the Jews. They know how to do everything right. All right. So you won't hear me speak badly. You won't hear me speak badly. No, it's impressive. I mean, look, that number, that 89% number really jumped out at me. So Am I just trying to put a silver lining on everything, Tamara, or is the news at least somewhat more encouraging? And does that mean we'll get Coachella by the end of the year?
Well, I don't know what Israel was doing correctly in order to have such a successful vaccination rate. Maybe dumping a bunch of oil into the Mediterranean helps your vaccination numbers somehow. I don't know, because they also did that this week. But they, so I don't know exactly what was successful about their distribution program as opposed to ours. But sure, that's great news. Even though ours is going slower than we were expecting, at the end of last year, Dr. Fauci was saying by April, like the lowest tier of people eligible should be receiving it. And I don't, it doesn't seem like that's going to be happening. But I think by May or June, I think of myself as probably the last person in line to get the vaccine, and I
saw the list. You actually are the last person. I don't know why. I don't know what you did. I don't know who you pissed off. Something on TikTok. I think you said something on TikTok. It's
probably
crazy. You're the last person on the list.
Yeah. And they but I still think I'm probably going to get it by May or June, probably June. So I do think, and maybe I am optimistic, but I do think that by the end of this year, by fall, we will start to, we'll be wearing masks where we go, but things will start to get back to a more social environment. I won't say get back to normal, because I don't think we're ever going to have a normal. I don't think things are ever going to return to the way they were before, February 2020, because just too many things have changed and our mentality has changed at this point. But I do think by December, we will all be getting to do a lot more things than we're allowed to do right now.
Look, Tamara, I know that this is of interest to you. I mean, spring training has started in baseball, and conveniently, the two states where they have spring training are Arizona and Florida, and they have a little bit more of a throw caution to the wind. I have a friend who is spending this whole week. She's going to all of the Angels spring training games this week, and she's posted some pictures. There are not a lot of people there. Everybody who's there is wearing masks. Look, that's something that I find encouraging, and I like to think that, maybe by the fall, there will be, like a 55,000 person. I'm specifically thinking of Dodger Stadium. Maybe they have 15,000, really spread out. If they feel like we're at that level, I would probably risk my family's health and be like, well, the government's never usually wrong. I'll go to a game.
Well,
why not?
Considering how much they were trying to get fans in stands, during the height of the pandemic, I would say that it's definitely sports venues are going to be the first to open up to the public.
I mean, the indoor arenas are open in New York, and so it'll be interesting to see. But again, you see these things, and I choose to not boil it down too much and to take away the positive from it. Scott, are you seeing a lot of positive? But please, if you want to rain on my parade with your dirty COVID rain, go ahead.
No, I see a lot of positive as well. I think, part of the reason why Israel did really well is that they were very good initially deploying their resources to pharmacies and centers and making it easy for people to go. And granted, they have a much smaller population than the US. The problem with the US is that even though we have federal oversight, you have 50 individual states. Within those states, they have their own regional, ways of being able to get things to people. So it's a whole different challenge than it would be for a lot of other places. Not saying that that's an excuse for America or, not giving the credit to where it's due in Israel, because they did do a great job and they started it initially from the beginning that way. And we are sort of playing catch up from the previous federal response with the previous administration. So, but as we saw, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was just approved on Friday, and that's going to get another 4 million, shots in the arm here starting this week, which again is only one shot. And so as we continue to see these vaccines continue to ramp up in their numbers, we'll be able to see more and more people be able to be vaccinated. And that's only going to help, sort of that snowball effect. Once you start going downhill and you start getting more and more vaccines and more people are vaccinated, you're only going to see the positive results, and we're already seeing that. And I think, like I said, that's why you're seeing more people fly on planes again. You're seeing people start to make some kind of travel plans, and obviously sports venues, especially outdoor sports venues, are going to be clamoring to get people back in the stands because they've lost so much money. And you're going to start seeing, movie theaters are starting to open up again in New York State, and you're going to start seeing that, I think, out here in California as well. It is definitely going to be heading in the right direction, but to Tamara's point, it's probably going to be a long time before we see a sense of normalcy, but it'll be as close to normal as we can get in the fall, and having people be able to have the options to do the things they want to do if they want to, for the most part.
The kissing booths will probably open up, I'd say, in November.
Yeah, but I'm really hoping for bobbing for apples before Halloween. What do you think the odds are? Because okay, good.
Good.
I was
apples in a vat of sanitizer, but
yeah, that seems like it would be safe.
Yeah.
I was talking. My wife and I were talking to friends of ours yesterday, and just the idea that if I fly next year, late next year, the idea of getting on a plane, I'm like, even if they don't require it, that I'd probably, because we've all flown, especially if you've flown overseas, a lot of times you'll have some passengers who are wearing masks, and it's something you used to notice. And I don't think I'd really notice it now, mostly because I'm like, well, I don't see why I wouldn't wear one, on a plane, just because the idea of the recycled air and all of that. I think we'll see things like that definitely start to change. But, Tamara, in reference to Scott talking about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, that's the single shot. But it's, I think about, 66. Yeah. So nationally it's 66% at preventing it, but 85% don't get very sick with it. But that's definitely, both of those numbers are far down from 95. So I'm wondering, is it going to turn into like ticket scalping, where you show up and you're like, you got anything down front? It's like, okay, are you ready for your vaccine? Yeah, but anyway, I can get some of that Moderna. Can I get some? Yeah, vaccine. You got a Pfizer for me anywhere? How much is that going to cost? But I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. One of the other things that I want to talk about before we leave is that the House has passed President Biden's $1.9 trillion spending relief bill, and I think that no Republicans voted for it in the House, so we're back to that. But we do need, if we want to see that get passed, you need to probably win some people over. I was already reading that there was a requirement for raising the minimum wage in there that they've now taken out. I'm wondering, Tamara, do you think that the 50-50 composition of the Senate with I almost said with Tamara Brown as the tiebreaker. It's weird. Vice President Harris is like, Tamara, how should I vote on this? And you tell her, which is weird because you're the last person in line for the shot.
Kamala's texting right now. Hold on.
But do you think that this will get passed in the Senate? And if it does, how they've already they've already taken the minimum wage out. So how watered down do you think it'll be?
Well, the minimum wage, I mean, that's not a surprise that they took that out. There will probably also be they'll be shortening the demographic that gets the 1,400. That will get a little smaller too. I think those are the main things. But whenever there's a new president in office, the opposing party tends to vote against the first few bills initially anyway, just to make the new president of the opposing party seem weak. But I think that I think most senators, everybody knows we need something to happen fast. We need something to happen fast. So I think the things that we already know are already expecting to be watered down, those are going to be watered down, and probably within the next 2 weeks, we're going to have a stimulus plan.
That's what I think. Scott, are you confident that we will get it and get it soon?
Yes, because they really don't have a choice, because the current situation of what we have expires March 14th. So that's less than 2 weeks away now. So they've got to come to some kind of agreement. And I do agree they couldn't put the minimum wage increase in there because the parliamentarian said it didn't fit into the reconciliation. So they're doing this bill as a reconciliation bill, which is a very arcane way of being able to say, they can do this based on budget, and they only need a simple majority as opposed to the super majority of 60 votes. But they can only do it 3 times in a year. So they're going to use their first strike basically on this to get it through. So I am very confident they will get it through. Obviously there's going to be tweaks, and it always happens. And then what they have to do once they make those tweaks, they have to send it back to the House for the House to revote on the revamped plan, then go back to the Senate for them to vote on that, and then take it back to go to President Biden's desk. So it's definitely going to be tight. They're going to have to do a lot of work on that. But the minimum wage thing they're going to have to hold off on for a while because that was not going to be able to be included. And I still think it's going to have a tough hill to climb when you need, the 60 votes to be able to pass it. You just don't have that, especially if Joe Manchin in West Virginia doesn't agree to it. I think they just need to renegotiate that and really work on. Instead of just doing it as a one size fits all approach, do it more of a tied into cost of living for various regions or states. And I think that would possibly help it get passed and even get a potential couple Republican votes, because as we were saying earlier, Republicans are in support of the minimum wage increase. And it's something that passed in Florida. They went for Donald Trump in the election, but they went heavily for increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour in Florida over a stepped period of time. So it is a popular thing. I think it just needs to be reworked and done with a little more bipartisan approach, and maybe perhaps with more of a regional approach, and not saying a one size fits all $15 across the board. Maybe it's $10 in Mississippi, maybe it's $11.50 in Alabama, whatever, tied to cost of living. But as of now, this main chunk of the stimulus will go through once they work out some of the kinks here, for sure.
Yeah, I think that you do make the point that it'll go through because it has to. But it's, not that they don't always find ways to extend their deadlines, just like they always find ways to give themselves raises and extra vacation time and, all that stuff. But I think it's another thing we can be optimistic about. I still can't figure out if I'm going to get a $1,400 check, a $600 check, a $0 check. That's the messaging that's gotten lost in the weeds in a little bit. And, I think that those are the important things, but I don't know. We'll see. And while we were talking, I saw that California is going to spend about $2 billion getting schools reopened before the end of the year. I think that like we were talking a lot about last week, somebody's feeling the heat of that potential recall election, even though it's a little ways off. But the reason to mention Gavin Newsom for a moment is that he really needs to work on the optics, because he did a TikTok, Tamara's favorite platform, over the weekend. But it was pointed out that he was doing it inside of a restaurant, and there was a table with food and drinks on it. And California remains the only state in the union where no one is allowed to dine indoors, with 0% indoor dining. So he just can't stay out of his own way. We'll keep an eye on that, mostly because it's local, but we'll also keep an eye on Cuomo too. So, look, and don't let DeSantis's popularity at CPAC fool you. We can keep an eye on him as well. Anyway, I appreciate everybody in the chat, although it was mostly Storage Yard resident, and we always appreciate his time. We will do better in letting you know when we're going to do the show. Sometimes I don't even know when we're doing the show, but we will certainly be back next week. Until then, Tamara, where can people find you?
Find me on social media at Hey Tamara.
And Scott, where can people find you?
You can find me at over there, SMan80, right there. Find me at SMan80 on Twitter. Yep.
Have you had time to get in any fights with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell or anyone else, or have you just working too hard?
I'm just working too hard, but let's hope get some good ones soon.
Yeah.
Maybe McConnell will join Clubhouse, and then you can really give him a talking to.
There we go. Yeah, I can give him a good talking to. He deserves it.
Look how fun that would be. And as always, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ, and you can follow the show at Biden Time TV on Twitter. And if you're enjoying the show and you are confused by the constantly evolving schedule, please subscribe to the Blackcast YouTube channel. BLADTCAST. If you're watching this, that's where you are right now, most likely, although you might be on Facebook. And like one of you might be on Twitch, but still, that's the easiest place to find all of it. You'll get this show, our show, Marvel Movie News, and the Marvel Movie Talk, excuse me. That's what our show is called. And also the Blackcast with some fun interviews and conversation. But that's all the time we have for this week. We will see everybody next week. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.